So at his trial, Socrates didn't try all that hard to defend himself. He was more interested in sort of sticking it to his accusers than he was actually being found not guilty. So he's sentenced. He's found guilty. He's sentenced to die. He doesn't fight the sentence very hard, and so it ends up that he will be executed. Now, among the rules in Athens are that you cannot carry out executions during certain festivals, and so Socrates is sentenced during one of these festivals. And part of this festival involves a ship going off to a foreign land, and it has to come back, and that sort of ends the festival. So Socrates is waiting in prison for the ship to come back, and he's visited pretty often by his friends. It's not an uncomfortable prison. He's just, waiting to die. So Crito comes to visit him at the beginning of the dialogue, aptly named Crito, just a day or two before the ship comes back and Socrates is going to die. And Crito wants Socrates to escape from prison and the unjust sentence, and he's got this whole thing set up. Crito is sort of a rich young Athenian man. He's got a bunch of similar friends in similar circumstances, so lots of sort of rich, powerful young Athenians who are all fans of Socrates, who've been his followers, who've set up this escape so they can bribe the guards to get him out of prison. They can get him on a boat out of Athens, and he needs to leave the country, but he can survive. This is not an uncommon thing in ancient Greece. When you get a death sentence, basically you tend to bribe people to look the other way and then escape. So this is really not out of the question for Socrates to do. And so it surprises Crito when Socrates isn't going to want to buy it. But first, Crito gives him this whole slew of reasons. He says, well, first of all, obviously, the sentence of death is unjust. You didn't corrupt the youth, you weren't impious, so this is just silly, you shouldn't die for this. Second of all, death is scary. Death sounds terrible. You shouldn't die. Third of all, if I don't help you escape, other people will think I didn't try very hard. I mean, I had the means, I had this all set up, I had the money. If you die anyway, people will think I didn't care about you. And for that matter, you'll be letting a lot of people down. You've got a family, you've got children and a wife and friends. We'll all be worse off without you. So you should escape from prison. I can get you out. Let's go. Socrates, true to form, says, oh, come on, what's your hurry? Let's talk, let's do some philosophy first. And what we should do philosophy about is whether it's okay to escape from prison. And so he and Crito need to have this discussion. The question is it just to escape? Is it just to violate the terms of his sentence that he just received in court? And he says, well, just because I'm going to die doesn't mean I can abandon my good principles that I've lived by my whole life. So we need to figure out, is this a good thing or not? And the first thing he wants to think about is Crito's argument about public opinion. People will think that Crito is a bad person for not helping Socrates escape from jail. He says, well, let's think about whose opinions actually matter. Is it everyone, or is it just people that have good opinions? And of course, he's going to say it's just people with good opinions. And this is in the same way he's going to make another expert analogy. Socrates really likes experts. He's going to say, well, if you're training to be an athlete, or if you're sick, if you need sort of someone to pay attention to your bodily needs, are you going to listen to just anybody's opinion, or only to the experts, only to the good people like doctors and athletic trainers? Well, of course you're going to listen to the doctors and the trainers, and you should just ignore anyone else who has an opinion. So he says to Crito, well, ignore any silly wrong person who thinks that you are a bad person for not helping me escape. Anyone who would think ill of you for that reason isn't worth consorting with. So forget about it. So he just throws that reason right out. The big question he wants to ask instead is it just to escape? And remember, we talked about justice in the Meno dialogue, right? We talked about justice and virtue a little bit. It also comes up in Euthyphro. It's a big theme in the Apology. Socrates loves to talk about justice. And so he says, well, is it just to escape or not? And he's going to get Crito to agree to 3 general rules to live by. And these are sort of the principles he was just talking about, the principles he can't abandon. So he says, here are 3 general rules that we need to agree to. Then we should figure out whether escaping from prison violates these rules. The first one is a pretty obvious one. Never do injustice. If something is unjust, you shouldn't do it. This is easy to accept. The second one is never do ill treatment, or never treat other people poorly. This is also a pretty easy one to accept, right? We ought to treat people well. We ought to treat people as they deserve. It ends up, he's going to say that 1 and 2 are the same. Ill treatment just is injustice. Third of all, don't break agreements that you make. Don't break your promises. When you sign a contract, you can't go against it. Things like that. Also pretty easy to accept. So Socrates is going to say, well, if escaping from prison violates any or all of these, I can't do it. And here's the gotcha. Escaping from prison, according to Socrates, violates all of these. And we're going to see why as we move through the rest of the dialogue.